Hello, Skiddlez here, and holy fuck, it's Christmas. And I'm so goddamn excited. It's Christmas, which means it's the end of the year. We get a whole bunch of shit, half of which we don't use, and it also means it's time for an obligatory top 10 games of the year video. And just to give out a few rules, this list only counts games that I played and I enjoyed the most this year, not games that other people enjoyed. So if you came here expecting Witcher 3, Fallout 4, and Metal Gear Solid V, then you can go bugger off, because none of these games are on this list. Well, that was kind of a spoiler warning. Oh, it's alright, I forgot to tell you, I got my braces off last week. Now my teeth look really cool and shiny. Ding! Number 10!
I don't know if I've ever said this before, but I don't like fighting games. They all feel very stiff, the controls make no fucking sense, and the entire genre has a learning curve so steep that it resembles the White Cliffs of Dover. I put one-on-one fighters alongside first-person shooters and MOBAs as genres that just aren't for me and I'll never get into. So having said all that, why is Mortal Kombat X at number 10? Well, it's quite simple really. The whole game feels like it's designed for newcomers. It all plays rather smoothly, the combo list is in the middle of the pause menu, and you don't have to input the fucking Konami code whenever you want to fling a fireball. The story is dumb. But did you really expect much from a game where breaking each other's collarbones is considered a formal greeting? You shouldn't go to a fighting game for a rich, in-depth story. And you also shouldn't call a plumber to redecorate your living room. Mortal Kombat X is just dumb fun. Grab a couple of mates and a couple of beers and drink the night away, ripping each other's heads off. In the game, that is, not in real life. That'll just make things awkward. Number 9! Lifeline. Lifeline is a game for the iOS, and it's one of the more unique games I've found on the iPhone library. The story is that some bloke named Taylor has crash-landed onto an alien planet, and it's up to you to keep in contact with Taylor and make sure he survives by making the right decisions. It's basically a modern-day equivalent of those choose-your-own-adventure novels. And much like a novel, there are no visuals. The whole game is entirely text-based, so don't expect to see something like a pink mutant shark doing the can-can. Have fun editing that, future me!
Damn you past me!
And a really cool feature that the game has is that occasionally Taylor will go off and do something by himself, and it'll take real world time for him to do it. Some might complain that this artificially elongates playtime, but I think it's a really clever way of adding to the immersion. Lifeline is a fantastic little iPhone game that one can easily play between intervals of doing something else. It's light on gameplay but rich in character-driven storytelling. It's a game that you can whip out, lay down, and have fun texting your astronaut buddy.
Number 8!
Hatfall. This may not come off as surprising, especially if you visited my DeviantArt page at least once, but I love Zero Punctuation. It's one of my favourite series on YouTube, and Yahtzee is my favourite gaming critic, to the point where he's inspired my own writing style. And by that I mean I've completely copied his writing style. So naturally, I was quite surprised when Hatfall came out. I got the iOS version like a good little consumer. And for those of you who have noticed, yes, there does seem to be an abundance of iPhone games on this list. I got the new iPhone 6 earlier this year and I wanted to make the best of it. The gameplay of Hatfall is incredibly simple. There are hats and various other objects falling from the sky for some unexplained reason, and it is your job to make sure the hats gently fall upon your head. You repeat this process until you fuck up. So don't fuck up. It's incredibly refreshing to play a game that you can just pull out at any moment and be murdering brain cells within minutes. And I feel like these kinds of pull out and play arcade games have gone out of fashion in the iPhone gaming market. Not saying they don't exist today, but they just get overshadowed by pay-to-win games, movie tie-in games, Flappy Bird derivatives, and crappy ports of big budget games. Because that's what I want when I'm playing Grand Theft Auto, my big fat greasy thumbs obscuring half the screen. Or maybe it's just the fact that I haven't set foot in the iPhone App Store in about 5 years. But anyway, Hatfall has the same style of comedy that you'd find in Zero Punctuation, and it's littered with hidden mini-games that you can randomly stumble into. It's a game that's perfect for killing time short of blowing up a Rolex factory.
Number 7!
Splatoon. If I'm honest, Splatoon is a game that I did not see coming at all, because saying the new post-apocalyptic third-person online multiplayer shooter from Nintendo is like saying the new dishwasher from Michael Bay. Splatoon is a new IP from Nintendo, which even in itself sounds like an oxymoron, where anthropomorphic squid people run around in 4v4 team deathmatches. As I've said before, I don't like shooters, especially online multiplayer ones. Were this game were handled by any other company, I wouldn't have cared at all, but the fact that it was made by Nintendo made me really curious. Perhaps this is a sign that Nintendo is trying to catch up with modern gaming, which is a scary thought because I always imagine Nintendo as your technophobic grandfather who barely knows how to send an email. Splatoon does some things rather different to most modern shooters. For example, there's more than 3 colours that screen on one time, there's a single player campaign that actually makes up for half of the whole game, and rather than killing opponents to score points, you instead win by covering the battlefield in your team's ink. Though mostly I just play through the single player because I'm bitter and set in my ways. Not saying it wasn't fun to to occasionally join an online match and watch some scrubs and the wrecking thereof. Nonetheless, Splatoon is fun. As is characteristic with Nintendo games, it's bouncy, colourful, vibrant, unique, and full of character.
Praise be for Lord Squiddington.
Number 6! Ah, fuck my toe!
Super Mario Maker. Do I even need to explain why? It's Mario Maker. You can make your own Mario levels, you can post them online, you play other people's levels and cry in a mix of despair and anger as you will never beat that one level made by you-know-who. And just to fill the time, here are some of my levels. Axiom Verge. Axiom Verge is an indie-developed metroidvania game, although if I'm honest, calling it a metroidvania game is a bit of a stretch, because all you need to do is hack off the last half of that word and that accurately describes the game right there. Axiom Verge is basically a Metroid game without the sexy protagonist, unless absurdly large sideburns really get your rocks off. Like me! The story is about a scientist named Trace who gets caught in a lab accident and is mysteriously transported to a bizarre alien world filled with monstrous creatures, dead bodies, and giant robot baby faces. We are then tasked to fend for ourselves and explore the world as we slowly uncover the mystery of the plot. The truly amazing feat of Axiom Verge is that the whole game was created by one guy, Thomas Happ, over the course of 5 years. I have a big appreciation for the solo developed indie games. I've gushed enough about Dust and Elysian Tale for that to be apparent, and it's even more amazing considering that Axiom Verge is fucking huge! The game's world is ridiculously large to the point where I got lost constantly and kept having to look up walkthroughs, and the game is said to have over 900 rooms and 40 different weapons. Fucking hell, Tom, you know how to keep yourself busy. One thing that really sucked me in is how atmospheric the game is. The presentation is top-notch for the 8-bit aesthetic, and the sound design uses harsh, screeching tones that really makes the world feel truly alien. And one cool game mechanic that Axiom Verge brings to the table is that early on in the game, you're given something called an address disruptor, which allows you to manipulate certain objects and enemies in order to progress, and it fits well into the game's philosophical story. But it's really hard to explain why it works without completely spoiling the story. So for the sake of preserving first impressions, you should all go and play the game for yourself and come back when you're done. I'll just be sitting here playing Pokemon.
Oh, you finished? Good game, huh? I certainly like that one twist involving that one character. Number 4!
Dragon Ball Xenoverse. To be honest, this was a game I never expected to see on this list because I'm not exactly what you'd call a fan of Dragon Ball Z. I do vaguely remember watching the show as a young lad, and my entire knowledge of the series stems from binge-watching the entirety of Dragon Ball Z Abridged while hyped up on Coke Zero and painkillers. My main problem with Dragon Ball Z games is that they're all practically the same, a fighting game that follows the story from the show. Same shit, different anus. But Dragon Ball Xenoverse mixes things around a bit by having a Sonic Generations-style time travel story. Basically, someone or something is messing with key elements from the Dragon Ball Z timeline, and it's up to you and your custom-made character that looks like a fridge with legs to set things right. Dragon Ball Xenoverse is an action RPG that plays similarly to games like God of War or Dynasty Warriors, with light attacks, heavy attacks, special attacks, and unique combo attacks that you use once then forget about. You can create your own character from the various races, from humans to Margins to whatever the hell Frieza's race is called. You can customize your special attacks, all of which are iconic attacks from the show, and the game also has a bunch of online features. The main hub world displays everyone's characters, and you can even emote by doing iconic poses. You can also fight in online battles or team up to complete various missions. So basically, it's a DBZ MMORPG. OMG! Dragon Ball Xenoverse is the one game I played the most this year, with the exception of Terraria 1.3. And while it's by no means perfect, the RPG thing can sometimes interfere with the action game thing, and some missions have some ludicrous spikes in difficulty. Look at you, Kid Trunks! You bastard! Fast-paced action RPG games are guaranteed to leave me hooked, and that's exactly what Dragon Ball Xenoverse did. It hooked me right through the gums.
Number 3!
Ultra Despair Girls : Danganronpa : another episode. Hey, let's play a fun game. It's called Let's Pretend We Didn't See This Coming. New from Mattel. Back in my Games of 2014 video, many of you would remember that Danganronpa 2 was my #1 game of the year, so it should come as no surprise to anyone to see another episode here. And you definitely shouldn't be surprised when you see Danganronpa 3 show up in my next Games of the Year list. Also, while we're on the subject, holy shit, Danganronpa 3! Ah! I have the biggest home voter! Danganronpa Another Episode is a spin-off game from the main series franchise, taking place between the first and the second games. We play as Kamaru Naegi, the sister of Makoto Naegi, the protagonist from the first game. She walked outside for the first time in a year to find a post-apocalyptic world covered in robot bears. It's like if Scott Cawthon tried to take over the world, which, considering the popularity of Five Nights at Freddy's, is theoretically possible at this point. Kamaru then gets captured and is thrust into a hunting game hosted by a really fucked up version of the kids next door. And this is where Another Episode starts to stray away from its predecessors. Where the first two Danganronpa games were murder mystery games, Another Episode decides to shake things up a bit and is instead a third-person shooter. The shooting gameplay is solid, although it can be a bit too easy. But I'm not going to take points off for that because the series originated as a puzzle-solving visual novel, and it's clear that the game is designed for people who aren't good at shooters. Which is good for me because I suck at shooters! Another thing that's notable in Another Episode is its strong use of character development. At the start of the game, Kamaru is set up as being easily scared and emotionally weak and always slouched over. But by the end of the game, she's a lot more proud and confident in herself and walks with proper posture. That kind of shit I love. And Toko Fukawa, a character from the first game, makes her return here as Kamaru's traveling companion. And she too gets her fair share of character development, and by the end of the game, the two are inseparable. It kind of reminds me of a more cutesy anime version of The Last of Us. Oh yeah, and you can also play as Toko's maniacal split personality, Genocide Jack. That pretty much sold the game for me right there. Shantae and the Pirate's Curse. Again, this is another one that people shouldn't be surprised to see because I did my very own review of this game and you should all go watch it. Partly because I don't like repeating myself and I'm also really lazy. But just to give a brief summary, Shantae and the Pirate's Curse is one of the best Metroidvania games in recent memory with memorable characters, quirky dialogue, amazing soundtrack, and the fucking cutest protagonist ever. However, there's one part in my aforementioned review where I said, and I quote,
"This game is probably going to be my #1 game of the year. I love it that much."
And by now you're surely asking, where's this game at #2 when you clearly said in your review that it was going to be at #1? To which my answer would be, that'd be way too fucking predictable, wouldn't it, smartass? It'll take away all the excitement away from this video. And my second answer would be, it was going to be my #1 game of the year, but after I posted that video, I then played another game. A game that has made me simultaneously cack myself laughing, shit my pants out of sheer horror, and still made me want to keep playing to the point where I've been neglecting my toilet. And the #1 game of the year that has managed to reupholster my furniture is Undertale by Toby Fox. I was originally very skeptical of Undertale because, one, I'm not into turn-based RPGs that look like MS-DOS had a wild night with a Super Nintendo and woke up with a bad rash in his pants, and two, whenever a collective group of people call something the best game ever, I always like to interpret that as a challenge. Undertale is a turn-based RPG in the style of Earthbound, with quirky dialogue, memorable characters, and the funniest sense of humor I've seen in any game in recent memory. Probably the most unique thing about Undertale is the combat. As I've said before, I don't like traditional JRPGs because you can pretty much recreate the experience by playing with an Excel spreadsheet in one window and watching a poorly dubbed anime in another.
Come rub my nipples. Excuse me?
But Undertale's combat is very dynamic. Whenever an enemy attacks, you're brought to a mini-game reminiscent of a bullet hell shooter where you have a chance to dodge any and all attacks. And each enemy has their own unique attack pattern with varying mechanics, and attacking enemies yourself is done with well-timed button presses, so that's all well and good. But the best thing about the combat is that you can play through the entire game without killing a single enemy. The game has a unique mechanic where any enemy can be persuaded out of battle by interacting with them in certain ways. And it almost becomes a puzzle whenever you meet a new enemy and you're supposed to either give it a pat on the head, strike up a friendly conversation, or in some cases, flirt with them. And depending on whether you want to befriend everyone or murder everyone, you can get a completely different experience of the game. It's one of the most unique battle systems I've seen in any RPG, and I really commend it for it. The story is what really captivated me. At first it starts out rather uninspired. Humans and monsters live together, humans and monsters go to war because somebody took the last Danish pasty, and now monsters are forced to live underground while the humans live like kings on the surface. It's almost like a reverse Gurren Lagann. But as you play through the game more and more, the plot gets thicker, questions get answered, and mysteries become solved, and it all led up to an ending that left me emotionally exhausted. And I'm not going to spoil any of it here because Undertale is a game that you should experience firsthand. I know that probably sounds really pretentious, but it's true. This game is a real experience. First you're confused, then you're happy, then you're sad, then you get really horny for a skeleton, and sorry, I lost my train of thought. Undertale has the best writing, funniest dialogue, and the most engaging combat of any game this year, and it deserves all the praise it gets. In fact, the only piece of criticism I do have for Undertale is that I can never play Plants vs. Zombies the same way again.
top 10 games of 2015. Please be sure to like and comment if you like this video, and be sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this in the future. And please tell me in the comment section what your favourite games of the year were. I'm very curious to see your responses. My name's Skiddlez, and I'll see you next time.